The last line. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of humanity's final hope, watching Earth burn. The Nix invasion fleet had reduced humanity's homeworld to ash and flame over 3 brutal months, their crystalline ships like angry stars against the night sky. 2 billion dead, another 3 billion in underground shelters, the rest scattered across what remained of the colonies. But today, everything would change. Engineering reports quantum core at full capacity, Commander. Lieutenant James Rivera announced from his station. The Defiant is ready. Sarah nodded, her expression carved from stone. The experimental vessel around them represented humanity's greatest achievement and their last chance for survival. While the Nix commanded vast fleets of conventional warships, the Defiant operated on principles that defied physics itself. Its quantum core could bend spacetime, its adaptive hull could phase through matter, and its weaponry could tear holes in reality. The ship was beautiful and terrible, a chrome arrow 3 kilometers long, studded with sensors and weapon ports that pulsed with otherworldly energy. It had never been tested in actual combat. There hadn't been time. The Nix had struck too fast, too hard. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Tactical Officer Maya Wong reported, her hands dancing across holographic controls. Reading 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 Nix vessels. They're forming up for another assault on the Luna defense line. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Luna line was humanity's last organized military force. Barely 50 ships cobbled together from the remnants of Earth's defense fleet. They wouldn't last an hour against such overwhelming numbers. Status of the quantum core, she asked. Stable and synchronized, Rivera replied. But Commander, the simulations only went up to handling 1,000 enemy ships at once, against 10,000. The simulations didn't account for human ingenuity, Lieutenant. Sarah's voice carried steel beneath its calm. Battle stations. All hands prepare for quantum engagement. Warning klaxons echoed through the Defiant as its crew of 300, the best survivors Earth had to offer, rushed to their posts. Sarah felt the ship come alive around her, its revolutionary systems humming with potential energy as the quantum core spooled up to full power. The Nix fleet approached with mechanical precision, their crystalline vessels arranging themselves in perfect geometric patterns. They fought like insects, with cold logic and overwhelming numbers. But they'd never faced anything like the Defiant before. They're launching the first wave, Wong reported. 2,000 ships on an attack vector. Begin quantum phasing, Sarah ordered. Plot a course through their formation. Let's show them what humanity can do. The Defiant's hull shimmered as quantum fields enveloped it. Reality itself seemed to bend around the ship as it accelerated toward the incoming Nix armada. The enemy opened fire, filling space with crystalline projectiles and energy beams. But the Defiant was already elsewhere and nowhere, its quantum state allowing it to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. Enemy fire passed through empty space as the ship danced between possibilities, drawing ever closer to the heart of the Nix formation. Quantum weapons hot, Rivera announced. Ready on your mark. Sarah watched the enemy formation growing larger on the main viewport, her mind racing through combat scenarios. The Nix relied on overwhelming force and superior numbers, but quantity had a quality all its own, and at these numbers, they'd create their own vulnerability. Target their center mass, she ordered. Full quantum dispersion pattern. Fire. The Defiant's weapons discharge, releasing concentrated bursts of quantum energy that ignored conventional physics. Where normal weapons would have scattered against Nix shields, these attacks struck at the fundamental level of reality itself. Space twisted and warped around the impact points as dozens of enemy ships simply ceased to exist, their matter scattered across quantum states. The Nix formation faltered for the first time, their perfect geometry disrupted by the unprecedented attacks. Their return fire became erratic, uncoordinated. Sarah allowed herself a thin smile. The enemy was finally learning fear. Multiple quantum hits confirmed, Wong reported, excitement bleeding through her professional tone. Enemy fleet showing signs of confusion. They're attempting to regroup. Press the advantage, Sarah ordered. Take us into the heart of their fleet. Prepare for close-range quantum engagement. The Defiant accelerated again, its quantum fields leaving reality itself distorted in its wake. As they plunged deeper into the enemy formation, Sarah knew they were making history. One ship against 10,000. Humanity's ingenuity against alien might. The battle was far from over. But for the first time since the invasion began, hope burned brighter than the fires consuming Earth. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight. They would survive. They would win. And the Nix were about to learn why you should never corner a species that had clawed its way up from the mud to touch the stars. Breaking point. The Defiant emerged from its first quantum jump, bleeding energy, its hull crackling with residual quantum distortions. Inside the bridge, emergency lighting cast crimson shadows across exhausted faces as damage reports flooded in. Hull integrity at 60%, Rivera called out, his voice hoarse. Quantum core showing signs of strain. We've never pushed it this hard before. Sarah studied the tactical display, watching the remaining Nix vessels regroup. They'd destroyed nearly 2,000 enemy ships in that first engagement, but the alien fleet was adapting. Their crystalline vessels now moved in tighter formations, their firing patterns more focused. They're learning, Wong observed, fingers flying across her console. The quantum phasing isn't catching them off guard anymore. They're tracking our probability patterns. Sarah had expected this. The Nix weren't just powerful. They were intelligent. Each ship contained a hive mind of crystalline processors, sharing data and evolving strategies in real time. But that ability to learn cut both ways. Show me their new formation patterns, she ordered. Wong complied, projecting a holographic display of the enemy fleet's movements. Sarah noticed something, a subtle rhythm in their repositioning, a mathematical precision that could become a weakness. Lieutenant Rivera, reconfigure the quantum core. Instead of random phase variations, I want synchronized pulses matching their formation shifts. Rivera's eyes widened as he grasped her strategy. We'd be sensing our quantum states to their movement patterns. It's risky. One miscalculation, and we'd materialize inside an enemy vessel. Sometimes the best defense is a perfect defense, Sarah replied. Make it happen. As Rivera worked, the enemy fleet launched its counterattack. 8,000 ships moved as one, their crystalline weapons charging with impossible power. The space around the Defiant lit up like a newborn sun as they fired. Quantum synchronization in progress, Rivera announced. 3 seconds to full alignment. Sarah watched the wall of energy approaching, time seeming to slow. This was the moment that would define everything. Either her strategy would work, or humanity's last hope would vanish in atomic fire. Synchronization complete. Execute quantum jump, Sarah commanded. Take us right into their teeth. The Defiant vanished microseconds before the Nix barrage arrived. But instead of random quantum shifting, it reappeared in perfect harmony with the enemy fleet's movements. For a fraction of a second, the human vessel existed in the same quantum state as the Nix ships, and that was enough. The laws of physics reasserted themselves with devastating force. Quantum fields collapsed, reality twisted, and hundreds of Nix vessels found themselves occupying the same space-time coordinates. The resulting cascade of quantum detonations tore a hole in the fabric of space itself, direct hits across their central formation. Wong reported, triumph in her voice, reading massive system failures in over 1,500 enemy vessels. But victory came with a price. The quantum synchronization had pushed the Defiant's experimental systems beyond their limits. Warning alerts screamed across every console as the ship's core began to destabilize. Quantum containment failing, Rivera shouted over the chaos. The core can't handle this level of synchronized phasing. We need to power down or... The rest of his warning was lost as reality itself seemed to crack around them. The Defiant's quantum fields fluctuated wildly. sending waves of nausea through the crew as space-time distorted. Through the viewport, Sarah watched in horror as pieces of the hull began to phase in and out of existence. All power to containment, she ordered. Divert everything we've got. The ship groaned as its systems fought to contain the quantum cascade. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the vessel as entire sections phased between realities. The crew worked frantically, their training holding even as the universe itself seemed to tear apart around them. Slowly, agonizingly, the quantum fluctuations began to stabilize. The Defiant's core pulsed with renewed rhythm, its containment fields reasserting control over the chaos. They'd survived. Barely. But as Sarah surveyed the damage, she realized they'd discovered something unprecedented. The synchronization attack hadn't just destroyed enemy ships, it had revealed a fundamental weakness in Nyx technology. Their crystalline vessels resonated at specific quantum frequencies, frequencies the Defiant could now exploit. "Get me a full analysis of those quantum signatures," she ordered. "Every frequency, every pattern. The Nyx think they've pushed us to our breaking point, but they've just shown us how to break them instead." As her crew worked to repair their wounded ship, Sarah allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The battle had cost them dearly, but they'd learned something invaluable. The Nyx weren't invincible. Their perfect crystalline technology had a flaw, and humanity's desperate gambit had found it. The real fight was about to begin. Counterstrike. The quantum frequency data scrolled across Sarah's display, each line revealing more about their crystalline adversaries. After 48 hours of repairs and analysis, the Defiant's crew had mapped every resonance pattern from their previous engagement. The Nyx weren't just using quantum technology. They were quantum technology, their entire existence bound to specific harmonic frequencies. "Look at this pattern," Wang said, highlighting a recurring sequence. "Their ships don't just communicate. They exist as a single quantum network. Each vessel acts as a node in their consciousness, which means we can turn their greatest strength into a fatal weakness," Sarah replied, studying the data. "If we can disrupt their network at the quantum level, we could shatter their entire command structure," Rivera finished. "But Commander, modifying our weapons to target these frequencies would require redirecting power from our defensive systems. We'd be vulnerable." The remaining 6,000 Nyx ships hung in high orbit around Earth, their crystalline forms refracting sunlight like a deadly aurora. They hadn't pursued after the Defiant's retreat, instead focusing on maintaining their blockade of humanity's homeworld. Sarah made her decision. "Begin the modifications. We're not going to win this through defense anyway." The next 12 hours were a blur of activity as the crew reconfigured the Defiant's quantum weapons. Using the mapped frequencies, they tuned each shot to resonate with the Nyx's crystalline architecture. It was dangerous, experimental work. One miscalculation could tear the ship apart. "Modifications complete," Rivera reported. "Quantum weapons are tuned to match enemy frequencies. But Commander, we'll only get one shot at this. The power requirements are enormous." "Then we make it count." Sarah opened a shipwide channel. "All hands, battle stations. We're taking the fight back to them." The Defiant emerged from quantum space directly behind the Nyx blockade, its weapons already charging. The enemy fleet reacted instantly, thousands of crystalline ships wheeling to face the human vessel. "Target their command frequencies," Sarah ordered. "Prepare to fire on my mark." The Nyx struck first, their weapons transforming space into a storm of crystalline death. But the Defiant was ready. Its remaining defensive systems engaged, quantum fields bending reality to deflect the worst of the barrage. "Taking heavy damage," Wang reported as the ship shuddered. "Shields failing." "Now," Sarah commanded, "fire everything." The Defiant's modified weapons discharge, releasing precisely tuned quantum pulses into the heart of the enemy fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the frequencies aligned. The effect was catastrophic. The quantum pulses resonated through the Nyx network like a virus, each ship amplifying the disruption and passing it to its neighbors. Crystalline vessels began to vibrate, their perfect forms distorting as quantum harmonics tore through their structure. "It's working," Rivera shouted. "Their network is collapsing." Sarah watched in awe as the mighty Nyx fleet began to shatter. Ships split apart, their crystalline forms unable to maintain coherence as the quantum cascade spread. The hive mind that coordinated their actions fractured, leaving individual vessels blind and confused. But the Defiant paid a terrible price for victory. The power required to generate the quantum pulses had burned out most of its systems. Hull breaches opened across multiple decks as structural integrity failed. "Core containment critical," Rivera warned. "We need to shut down, or we'll tear ourselves apart." Sarah held her ground. "Not yet. Target their flagship. One more shot." The massive Nyx command ship loomed ahead, its crystalline surface already showing signs of stress from the quantum cascade. The Defiant's weapons charged one final time, drawing power from life support itself. Fire! The shot struck true, connecting with the flagship's quantum frequency. The massive vessel's crystalline structure resonated, amplified, and shattered. The destruction of their command node sent shockwaves through the remaining fleet, destroying their ability to coordinate and fight as one. As emergency systems screamed warnings, Sarah allowed herself a moment of fierce pride. They'd bloody well done it. The Nyx weren't invincible after all. Their perfect crystalline technology, their quantum superiority, all of it had been turned against them by human ingenuity and determination. "Get us out of here," she ordered. "Random quantum jump. Anywhere but here." The Defiant vanished just as the last Nyx ships began to break apart, leaving behind a graveyard of crystalline fragments orbiting Earth. They'd won this battle. But Sarah knew the war was far from over. Somewhere out there, more Nyx fleets were coming. But now humanity knew how to fight them. And next time, they'd be ready. The core gambit. The Defiant drifted in the shadow of Mars, its battle-scarred hull undergoing emergency repairs. Through the command deck's viewport, Sarah watched the incoming sensor data with growing concern. The Nyx had responded to their defeat by dispatching their largest fleet yet, 15,000 ships, led by their central hivemind vessel. "Core repairs at 80%, Rivera reported. "But our quantum weapons are still offline. We won't survive another direct engagement." Sarah studied the tactical display, showing the approaching Nyx armada. Their previous victory had taught them how to hurt the enemy, but the aliens had adapted. The new fleet's quantum signatures were constantly shifting, making their previous strategy useless. "Show me the hivemind vessel's energy patterns," she ordered. Wong complied, projecting a holographic analysis of the massive ship at the fleet's center. Unlike the other vessels, its quantum signature pulsed with a unique rhythm, the heartbeat of the Nyx consciousness itself. "I have a plan," Sarah announced, "but it's going to sound insane." The senior staff gathered around as she explained. The Defiant couldn't fight this fleet conventionally, but their quantum drive offered another option. If they could match their phase frequency precisely to the hivemind vessel's signature, they could potentially materialize inside its quantum barrier. "You want to teleport us into the enemy flagship?" Rivera asked incredulously. "The precision required would be astronomical. One miscalculation, and we'd scatter our atoms across space. Which is why we're not teleporting," Sarah replied. "We're going to ride their own quantum network in. Their ships are all connected. We just need to hijack that connection." The next hours were a blur of frantic preparation. The Defiant's quantum core was reconfigured to emit the exact frequency of the Nyx network. They would have one chance to infiltrate the hivemind vessel before the aliens detected the intrusion. "Enemy fleet entering Mars orbit," Wong reported. 10 minutes to weapons range." Sarah took her position on the bridge. "Begin quantum synchronization. Match their network frequency exactly." The Defiant systems hummed as they aligned with the Nyx quantum web. Reality itself seemed to blur around them as the ship phased partially into the alien network. Through the quantum connection, they could feel the vast consciousness of the hivemind, cold, crystalline, and utterly alien. Synchronization complete, Rivera announced. We're inside their network, but they'll detect us any second. All power to quantum drives. Sarah commanded. Take us in. The Defiant surged forward, riding the quantum currents of the Nix network like a digital ghost. The enemy fleet's weapons passed harmlessly through them, as they existed simultaneously in normal space and the quantum realm. They reached the hive mind vessel in seconds, their quantum signature now perfectly matched to its crystalline architecture. Sarah felt a moment of vertigo as reality shifted, and suddenly they were inside, their ship materializing in the vast central chamber of the alien flagship. We're in, Wong confirmed. But our quantum core is critically unstable. The power drain from maintaining this state. Then we finish this quickly, Sarah replied. Target their central matrix. Fire everything we have left. The Defiant's remaining weapons discharged directly into the heart of the Nix hive mind. At this range, inside their own quantum barrier, the aliens had no defense. The crystalline chamber shattered, taking the controlling consciousness with it. The effect rippled through the quantum network instantly. Without the hive mind to coordinate them, the entire Nix fleet fell into chaos. Ships collided, weapons fired randomly, and their perfect formation collapsed into disarray. But the Defiant was trapped. The quantum energies that had allowed them to infiltrate the flagship now threatened to tear them apart. The ship groaned as reality itself twisted around them. Core containment failing, Rivera shouted. We need to get out now. Sarah had one last card to play. Reverse quantum polarity. Use their own network to slingshot us out. The gambit worked. The Defiant rode the collapsing quantum network like a wave, bursting out of the dying hive mind vessel moments before it exploded. They emerged into normal space as the Nix fleet tore itself apart. 15,000 ships reduced to drifting crystal shards. The core gambit had succeeded, but the cost was staggering. The Defiant's quantum systems were burnt out, their revolutionary technology pushed beyond recovery. Yet as Sarah watched the remnants of humanity's greatest enemy scatter across the Martian orbit, she knew it had been worth it. They had proven once again that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers. It was the ability to take impossible risks and make them work. Dawn of tomorrow. Earth's atmosphere was clearing for the first time in months. The constant orbital battles had filled the skies with debris. But now, as Sarah stood at the viewport of the crippled Defiant, she could see blue beginning to peek through the clouds. The ship had paid a terrible price for victory. Its revolutionary quantum systems were burnt out beyond repair, leaving them with barely enough power to maintain orbit. But they had succeeded. The Nix hive mind was destroyed, their massive fleet reduced to glittering crystal fragments in space. Message from Earth Command, Wong announced, her voice thick with emotion. The underground shelters are opening. People are coming up to the surface. Sarah watched as points of light began appearing on the dark side of the planet. Cities reclaiming the night. Humanity had endured 3 months of hell, but they had survived. More than that, they had won. Final damage assessment, Rivera reported. The quantum core is completely dead. We'll never build another ship like the Defiant. The technology was pushed beyond its theoretical limits. We didn't win because of technology, Sarah replied. We won because we did what humans do best. We adapted, we took risks, and we refused to surrender. The tactical display showed scattered Nix ships across the solar system, cut off from their hive mind and running blind. Without their quantum network to coordinate them, they were no longer a unified threat. Earth's remaining conventional forces were already moving to clean up the stragglers. Command is reporting something else, Wong said. The crystal fragments from the destroyed Nix ships, they're not just debris. They're data storage. We're downloading their entire technological database. Sarah smiled. The Nix had brought overwhelming force to crush humanity, but instead they had given them a gift. The crystalline technology that had nearly destroyed Earth would now help rebuild it. Begin landing operations, she ordered. It's time to go home. The Defiant made its final descent through Earth's atmosphere, its battle-scarred hull glowing as friction built up around them. Below, crowds gathered to watch humanity's savior return. The ship that had turned the tide of an impossible war was coming home. They landed in what remained of New York Harbor, the waters still littered with the wreckage of the initial invasion. As the crew prepared to disembark, Sarah took one last look at her command deck. The Defiant would never fly again, but its legacy would live on. "Commander," Rivera called from his station. "Long-range sensors are picking up something. More Nix ships at the edge of the solar system." Sarah felt the old tension return, but this time it was different. The new contacts weren't attacking. They were running. The destruction of their hive mind hadn't just saved Earth. It had shattered the Nix empire itself. Without their quantum network, their entire civilization was fragmenting. "Let them run," she said. "Let them tell others what happened here. Let them remember what it means to threaten humanity." The sun was rising over the Atlantic as Sarah stepped onto Earth's soil for the first time in months. The air was thick with dust and smoke, but she could taste the promise of renewal. Around her, crews were already salvaging Nix crystal technology, preparing to integrate it into Earth's reconstruction. They had lost so much. Cities destroyed, billions dead, their most advanced technology burnt out saving them. But they had gained something too. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had proven that determination and ingenuity could overcome any odds. As Sarah watched the dawn break over her wounded but undefeated world, she knew this wasn't just a victory. It was a beginning. Humanity would rebuild, using the very technology that had nearly destroyed them. They would return to the stars, not as victims or targets, but as survivors who had earned their place in the galaxy. The war was over. The dawn of tomorrow had begun.